Oh, okay, here comes Senator Kirkpatrick. That's great. Did the time change mess anybody up last night?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Golly.
you totally messed me up. I think it takes a week to recover.
Yeah,
I think it's like a week.
I think we need to get Senator Watson to introduce that bill again. bring that thing back alive. Let us pray. Lord God, we thank you for the moment that you've given us to be here. Lord, we thank you for that you are in our presence. Lord, we just ask you to provide us with the wisdom, courage to do the great things for the great people of Georgia. In your son's name I pray. Amen. We appreciate y'all doing this for us. We just, as always, you always say, what, I wish I'd asked this, I couldn't ask this, blah, blah, blah type deal. So we just wanted DECAL and DOE to come back and spend a few more minutes with us. And no big deal, but it is a big deal. And so I think we'll go in the same order. So we'll start out with DECAL. And I think at this point in time, since you've already gone through the budget, I think that we may just start asking questions, if that's okay with the group here. Is that okay with y'all? Okay. One thing that Senator Sims, you wanna ask again about this chart?
Yes, sir.
What number are you?
I guess it was 123.6.
Yeah. What number? What mic number are you?
Oh, I am 15.
15. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On lines 123.6, increase funds to expand the summer transition program. First of all, good morning.
Good morning.
And I would like to get some more understanding of what the summer transition program consists of. And your folks did come by to talk to me. They brought a chart that showed all of the participating providers, schools and private and public, I'm assuming. So, but kind of give us a little bit of information about the summer transition program. What does it entail?
So the summer transition program is a part of Georgia's pre-K program, but it occurs in the summer. It's a much smaller program. The total budget is about $11 million annually. We have about 396 classrooms all over the state, and this is divided into two types of programs. One is a rising kindergarten program, which is the larger of the two. It's about 324 classes. These are for students who need a little extra help before they enter kindergarten. So they could have attended a Georgia pre-K class and been identified by their teacher that they need a little bit more support. Maybe they're on a wait list and didn't get to attend a Georgia pre-K class. Maybe they just moved to the area. So these are for a small group of about 4,500 students that need that extra boost before they enter kindergarten. We also have a smaller portion of the summer transition program, which is the rising pre-K program. This is only about 70 classes. This is a much smaller portion of that, so about 840 students. And these are for students that are enrolled in Georgia pre-K, but they've been identified mostly as Spanish-speaking students, and we know those students from our research need more help before they get to Georgia pre-K. And so that is what that program is for. Again, it's a 5-week program, it's a smaller class size, and we also offer a transition coach to assist parents with any other resources they might need before they enter pre-K or before they enter kindergarten.
The problem that I want to express is looking at the list from, I don't know what year this was.
Last summer.
There are no Southwest Georgia classes included except Ben Hill and Fitzgerald, I think. Fitzgerald and Tifton. I have none. Most of the Senator Goodman didn't have any. You don't have any.
Senate District 20 doesn't
How long has this program been in
It's been in
operation?
existence for 11 years, and it's an application process. So if a program would like to offer the summer transition program, they need to apply to us. They need to be an existing Georgia pre-K provider. And then given the funding that we have, we make that decision based on the biggest need. I believe the application just opened last week once the governor signed the amended bill because we knew how many classrooms we could fund. So that application is open right now for programs to apply.
So how do we notify? And I agree with that.
Every Georgia pre-K classroom,
Ma'am?
every Georgia pre-K classroom currently gets a notification that this application process is open, so they know.
Because like in our, I hadn't looked at all my counties, but I know Claxton and Metter, who have a tremendous Hispanic population, they're not on the list. Statesboro's not on the list. So
They are absolutely
do
welcome
we
to
follow up
apply.
with them and say, have y'all overlooked this or anything like that?
We send them the initial information, and we depend on them to apply to us. And we don't usually have we always have more than we can fund. So I think folks know about it because they're current Georgia pre-K providers, and we have pretty good communication with them. They may not have the need. I don't know the reasons that they're not applying. I don't know that.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Senator Watson has a large Hispanic population in his area, and he didn't have any classes either. How do we notify the schools?
We have a system called Panda where we send all of our notifications on a regular basis.
Well, I think, I'm sorry. Senator Parent?
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. I have a question about summer transitions as well. So did you tell us that it's the same instructors that would just stay on?
Usually, yes.
Okay.
Because we're building upon what they've already been trained on as a Georgia pre-K teacher. So yes, for the majority of them, probably almost 99% are the exact same teachers that have just taught that Georgia pre-K class.
Okay, and for the others, I mean, the 1%, what do they
We
do?
provide training for teachers before anything like that would start. But we depend on Georgia pre-K teachers to do this.
Right,
Yes.
that's the main source, okay.
Absolutely,
So it hasn't
yes.
been something where you've tried to find others who could come in for that short?
That would be up to the individual program when they
Okay.
apply to us. They hire the teachers and they find their teachers. We just train and prepare those teachers to teach either the summer transition program or Georgia pre-K, but they're mostly Georgia pre-K teachers, so they're already ready to go.
Okay.
It's a
okay.
very short turnaround.
Oh, right. So you said we haven't been able to fund all the applications, which is one of the reasons.
Right.
You're probably not beating the pavement, I imagine, since we can't even fund all the ones we're getting. What percentage are we able to do right now?
I don't have that number. I'd have to get that for you. I don't know.
I mean, is it like most of them?
I don't know. I'd have to get that number
Okay,
for you.
I would
really
like
don't
to know that. Because if we don't know, how do we know whether or not it's something that we want to put more
Sure.
money to?
Right now, we were really just focusing on backfilling the GEARS dollars that the governor gave us to fund the 369 classes over the last 2 to 3 summers, really to address learning loss due to COVID. So that was our priority right now, is to make sure we're not cutting classes this summer because that GEARS funding ran out. So that was really our priority this year.
So are we making, and I agree with that, are we making the governor's office aware of the need for this? I mean, that because if you take Senator Sims'
Absolutely.
comment and our comment, are they, surely the governor's office has a passion for this the way we have a passion
They
for
do.
it?
That's why they gave us, I think it was around $8 million in GEARS dollars over the last several years to increase the class sizes. And right now, again, we're trying to stabilize that with lottery dollars, which is what the governor did and the House did and you guys did as well in the amended budget.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm speaking for the 13 counties that I represent in Southwest Georgia, as those other senators that do not have any classes on this list. Nothing. Muskogee County, I didn't see any representation for Muskogee, and it's a huge county. And I just find it strange that we're being left out. I really do, and I'm really upset about this. This bothers me. It disturbs me greatly. It really does. So I would really like to see Southwest Georgia and other parts of the state included, other than North Georgia, Metro Atlanta, Coastal Georgia. It's like we don't even exist.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That is definitely not how we fund any of our programs.
It's not damaging to me, it's damaging to the children that need it. And I think that's where we lose sight of the importance of this committee and the importance of the Department of Education. It's not for us. We're adults. We all have degrees, we've been to school, or you're working towards that. But the children that do not get a chance to have this exposure is very disturbing to me, very disturbing. And there's plenty of money here.
Senator Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, thank you. I just, as I'm listening to this and reviewing the numbers, it seems to me that there's a disconnect somewhere between the notification process and people taking advantage of the program. And it seems to be a matter of outreach or something that may need to change, or the way that we're doing notification may need to change. If we're not getting applications back from the counties that maybe need it the most, then maybe we need to think about changing the way that you guys are getting the information out there to the different programs.
We can certainly look into that. I just have to reiterate, though, that this program is much smaller than Georgia Pre-K. Not every 4-year-old or 5-year-old needs that additional 5 weeks. So it's never going to get to the point of 159 counties and 80,000 children. It's also very difficult for many of these programs to get teachers to stay on for those additional 5 weeks. It used to be a 6-week program, and we've had programs come back to us and say, we can't get our teacher to come for 6 weeks. Can you reduce it to 5? But we also want to maintain the integrity of the program. And if you reduce it anymore to satisfy that need, so it's a balancing act. But we can absolutely always look at how we communicate. But we also have some other factors that influence just the sheer number of applications that we receive.
I think it's kind of like when we were looking at Governor's Honors Program, we looked at some counties that had not participated, and they actually reached out one-on-one to those counties. And I think that's what Senator Sims is trying to say, or is saying, reach out directly to those counties and encourage them, because if you got a whole 25, 30, 40 counties in Southwest Georgia not participating, there's some reason why they're not participating. And I don't think this governing body up here would really accept that and understand that we just forget about those people. And I think that's Senator Sims, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, sir. And I did a little mini poll this weekend asking private and public providers, some of the school districts, and they had no information about the program. So maybe we do need to change the way we are disseminating information. Yeah, thank you.
And please keep in mind, this is not please don't think this is a witch hunt. It's not. This is information gathering, because we're the more we dig in this education stuff in Georgia, the more we're concerned about education. We appreciate what y'all doing. We just feel like there's some opportunities out there that are not being met, and the DOE side also. Senator Walker.
I would just be curious to know if any programs in the 20th district applied and were turned down without that information. I mean, could be there are communities in our districts that are wanting to participate and haven't made the cut, because you said it.
We can get you that.
You don't accept them all, and you don't.
It's just due to funding, though. It's not because, I mean, we have a limited
well,
amount
I
of
would
funding,
suggest
so that's the reality.
from, I would maybe score it, put a geographic component in the scoring maybe.
I can share with you how we make those decisions as well, and give you a list of who applies and how we work that process, for sure.
If you want us to support the program, and we want to support the program, but we are each representing our district.
Understand.
And I'm a lot more interested in what's happening in my district than I still care about the whole state, but.
Yeah, that's understandable. Well, you're supposed to be. Let me ask you, the 12310 in our budget, which is provider management system, we've been hearing over the last few days that there are some issues with the CAPS management system, And how does this interact with that system?
So this is just for Georgia Pre-K. So that those are unrelated. This is for our Georgia Pre-K provider management system, which is over 20 years old and out of date, hard to make updates to, and we can increase security and automation and enhance features. What you're referring to is our new provider management system for CAPS, which again, as you all know, is our subsidy system, which we launched in November 15th. We have certainly had some hiccups, like you would with any new system, probably more than we expected. But the majority of those problems have been resolved. Now we're dealing with very specific issues. We still send out about $12 million in payments to child care providers every week through that system. So we definitely have some challenges, but we have worked through them day and night, and they're almost resolved. But those are two different systems.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I want to reiterate the fact we haven't been, and I've actually shared with Chairman Irwin last night that when I asked you the other day if I could quote you, and you said I could quote you on the expanding of the pre-K program. And Senator Irwin, we got a bill over there, and hopefully it will be heard either today or either probably next Monday, and we can get it passed to actually expand that program. That'd be great. Because as we've said so many times, we're only, of the whole population in Georgia, we're only hitting about 61% of the kids that would be available for pre-K. Senator Parent.
Thank you. I wanted to actually piggyback on that, Mr. Chairman. So there's the legislation that obviously I support, and we talked about a long time ago, related to the capital funding for pre-K classrooms in public schools for our public providers. What could be done, if anything? What discussions are there around the private providers? Since I know it's about 50-50, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones's recommendations address that when she recommends an equivalent lease payment for private child care providers. I believe she modeled that after charter schools are funded, and I'm kind of speaking out of turn because I'm not an expert on that, but I know she was. And ultimately, that would just equate to an increase in operating funds for child care providers to be able to pay their mortgage or pay their lease, which they do receive operating funds, but definitely not enough to cover all their costs. And I think we always try to treat public and private the same, but in some cases it can't always be the same, and that would be the difference. But we hear the same from private that we do from public, that they just don't have those ongoing operating dollars, to fund that building. Obviously, we can't build a new building for a private company, but we can support them in those ongoing lease or mortgage payments.
So that's in legislation that the House has sent
That would not
us.
require legislation.
That does. Oh, it's just part of the budget.
Right, it would be, but it would be. It's not in the budget. That was part of the House Working Group's recommendations.
Okay, but it's not currently getting
It is
funded.
not. It is not.
I see. Okay.
Senator Walker and I have talked over the weekend several times about the CAPS program. I think he really talked a good bit, had a lot of questions about this the other day, and we do too. Senator Walker, you want to?
Well, I think you sent us an email, or sent me one anyway, making it very clear that the CAPS was funded by lottery.
Georgia Pre-K is funded by lottery, and CAPS is funded by state general funds and
Okay.
federal funds. The majority of CAPS dollars are federal dollars.
So one thing we talked about, Chairman, was the reducing the class sizes, and that's Georgia
Right.
That's Georgia
Right.
Pre-K.
Yes, sir.
So if we can't move that $9,500 to CAPS, $9,500,000 to CAPS.
No, you can't use lottery dollars for CAPS. It's a constitutional requirement that it's used only.
Is there
for
anything else in this budget that we could supplant with lottery dollars and move that to
I couldn't make
CAPS?
that determination for you. That would be Lindsay.
So if they're lottery funded line items,
My understanding is that lottery funds have to stay in the pre-K budget program. So we would not be able to move it over to CAPS. So everything that's in program number 123 is eligible for lottery funding, but it has to stay within that program or
Okay.
in the HOPE programs in student finance.
So we don't have anything that we're funding with general funds in this budget that we could supplant with lottery dollars?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But now, one thing you did say the other day that caps at about $7,600, I think, per child.
If the recommendations, the governor's recommendation would increase it to the 50th percentile, which would be about $7,600 per child per year. The House agreed with that. So if the Senate agrees with that, yes, in October, that is what we will be paying.
So if that was increased to 55%, does that mean we're going to get that many more kids opportunities for the CAP program?
No, that's based on serving 50,000 children. So that would just be increasing the rate we pay for child care providers to provide child care to 50,000 children on CAPS.
So how do we get the number of children higher that qualify for the program?
You have to increase the funding. So the funding would do one of two things, and you kind of have to make a decision. Either you provide additional funding and it goes to additional children, or you provide additional funding and it goes to increase the rates that we pay to child care providers. And we need to do both. But my priority right now is to increase rate for child care providers, because the rates that we will have to go back to are very, very low.
Mm-hmm.
They do not come close to covering the cost of quality child care, which they are all quality rated. It's hard for them to recruit and retain teachers when they're paid at this low rate. And it's also hard for the families, because if you think about it this way, the more that the state pays, the less the family pays.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's really where priorities lie. And right now, my priorities lie with paying child care providers a higher rate. The 50th percentile is much better, but we still need to look at increasing that before we serve more kids. And it's a hard balance, and people probably think that's an unpopular opinion of mine. But I've committed to my child care providers at this point, we have to pay you more, or they're going to stop providing the care.
So how did we get to that point? How do we get only paying them 25%? Some of these numbers just stagger me that we are
It's
the
just a
greatest state in
funding
Georgia,
issue.
greatest state in the United States, and we don't
Because the
take care of our own.
COVID dollars are going away,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes.
But we were at 25% before and have underfunded this program as long as I've been here, in my opinion. I mean,
You got a question?
yes.
This is
So
a
what
round, this is a
so we
roundtable
know that
discussion.
I mean, I completely agree, obviously, that if you are at 25%, not only are you totally out of compliance with the federal requirements on the money that's coming to us, but just as you said, you're going to be lessening the opportunities, and obviously when childcare to be quality, not substandard. So like, I'm with you on that. I guess my question is, we still are, because the COVID dollars are running out, losing 20,000 kids off the program, and that's
Eventually.
and as we already discussed at our last meeting, we're still at only being able to serve 15% of the kids.
Right.
So we're very low. The question I have is, what conversations have you been able to have with the governor in terms of this I mean, is he not concerned? Like, what's the, if we're losing the 20,000 kids? I mean, I hear what you're saying about the answer that we're getting is sort of like, given this budget, this is what I recommend. How are we getting to this is the budget? Because there is theoretically money. It's all decisions that are being made either by the governor or by the legislature.
Mm-hmm. Well, the governor's office is very aware of the impact of any type of one-time dollars that are going to go away, and I think they're very aware, and they know that it's not going to be fun. But I think the governor absolutely supported my priority, increasing it to the 50th percentile.
But did you
I
have a
can't-
conversation about, it's really a shame, Governor, that we're going to lose these 20,000 kids off the program, and we're still only
The
serving
governor is
15% of
aware
kids?
of how the loss of federal dollars will impact children. Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, just one comment. I mean, this program's not the only program that's losing federal funds. The VOCA funds are drastically cut too. So it's all a matter of balancing. And so we shouldn't look at it in isolation as a legislature. But my question is about the quality rated program, because you mentioned something the other day about trying to figure out whether the quality rated program is actually doing what it's supposed to do or whether it's worth it. Can you comment on that just a little bit more?
Yes, ma'am. So I was referring to the quality rated language and literacy endorsement, which is part of the quality rated program. We have lots of research that show that the quality rated program, which is 11 years old, does improve quality in childcare. The endorsement is a smaller portion of it. So once you're quality rated, if you want to receive additional professional development and training and materials, you can receive that from DECAL for free and you get an endorsement. That's been a very small program because it was announced in 2019 and then COVID hit. We had to do it all virtually. So we have paused it while we do an evaluation to make sure that works. We did not receive any additional funding to do that, so we're using it with existing staff. We've done about 30 programs have received the endorsement. While they tell us it is meaningful, we want to make sure that it is meaningful and that we're using our resources wisely.
Senator Davenport.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. The other day, you talked to us about the reducing the class size from 22 to 20, and it was going to be, you were going to phase it. I think there were 400, and you were going to do 100 a year, and this is 1 year, 4 year phase. Tell me about that again. What?
So in order to reduce the class size, we will need to add about 400 classes across the state. We
Okay.
will not be able to do that in 1 year. So we propose doing it over 4 years, which means for the next school year, which will begin in August, we will add 100 additional classrooms all throughout the state to serve the same number of kids. We won't be serving less kids. The class size will just be smaller. So those kids will be spread out over more classes.
Okay.
So how are y'all going to identify those classes?
Well, we're going to first work with, it's going to be an application process. It always is every year. We reach out first to our current Georgia pre-K classrooms and see if they want additional classes. Then we also will have an open application for anyone that is interested in an additional class. If they can prove to us that they have the need and we need that in their area, we will fund it.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't remember if we touched on this at our last hearing, but just in case we didn't, and if we did, refreshing my memory, where are we with salary parity for pre-K lead and assistant teachers versus what the K-12 scale is? Where are we currently with that?
Teacher parity with our pre-K lead teachers and K-12 teachers is close. It is not exactly the same. We made some changes, I think it was back in 2017, where our pre-K teachers do receive a step just like a K-12 teacher, but it's not exactly the same. Again, Jan Jones recommended, Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones recommended, I think it was about $6 million to move our Georgia pre-K teachers to the actual T&E scale so it would be exact parity. Our assistant teachers make about $20,000 a year, which is my understanding is less than a K-12 parapro.
And how many hours are they working for the $20,000 a year?
That's 190 days, and that would be, it's a 6.5 hour class day, but they're 8 hours pre and post. So 8 hours a day, 190 days. So just like a teacher.
Do they get health insurance?
They should get health insurance if they are if they're
Right.
funded in public, but they most likely do not receive health insurance if they are in a private child care program because that cost is
Yeah.
not attainable.
So speaking of, so the 20,000, and say you're in the private and you're not going to get health care most likely, how does that 20,000 compare to a salary that you would get, say you're doing like the three-year-old program at a private?
So I don't know the
Speaking of
hourly. I'm sorry, I don't
reimbursement
know the
rates
hourly of
and-
the 20,000. I can tell you that on average, a child care teacher makes about $12 a year, an hour. I don't
Right,
know what
so
the hourly
these are
is
part
for
of the whole
20,000.
ecosystem where it's just all low pay and it's struggling. Wouldn't you agree?
It's very low pay, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the whole system is
So
collapsing under the weight of low pay.
So will you repeat what you just said about the $12 an hour
On average, child care teachers make $12 an hour.
across the state of Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah, which is why it is important, Mr. Chairman, moving us to the 50% versus being at the 25%. But the
Oh, yeah.
point I was trying to make, I think, at the last hearing is that there's like a cycle of low pay because the families can't afford to pay that much more, but then the teachers are making so little that there's not really an incentive, and then your quality suffers, and it's like a whole ecosystem of a system that isn't really serving Georgia's kids or our economy the way we want it to. And so understanding that and making some moves as a legislature over time to improve it and bolster it, I think is something that this whole committee would care about.
I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing a lot of passion among this group, but you're also seeing a lot of support that this group would be willing to give to you. Now, that doesn't mean, I don't know what all that means is next level and all that, but if you, we're passionate about it, and so we would love to work with you, help you, whatever we can to move these numbers, and just like Senator Sims' situation down there, whatever we can do, we're there. But thank you. Do we have any more questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank
It
you.
was very important, and thank you for being here.
I appreciate your support.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Ma'am? Good, that was great. Department of Education. Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. Thank y'all so much for being here today. I think probably the first thing that maybe Senator Walker and I want to clear it up is the school bus situation. Isn't that right? The school bus?
Yes, where are the school buses on this?
The pupil transportation, that is, let me see if I can. Well, it's technically, it's not the school buses that we're paying for. That's out of the capital outlay projects, but this is the appropriation that pays for operational costs. But that is,
148.1. $204 million. Explain that to us.
so, a little sheet right here. So basically, I think there were two parts to this increase. These funds actually fund the operational costs, such as like drug testing, bus insurance, driver benefits, and operations of our school bus system. And we had an outdated, I know you heard a lot about an outdated survey that we were implementing with how we allocate these funds to the districts. And one of those reasons was because of such a low funding going towards these. Had we updated the survey, it would have had about 2 or 3 districts getting 95% of the funding, and a lot of smaller districts really not getting a very nominal amount. So this influx allows our districts to fund close to 40% of their operational costs now.
So the actual school bus, the rolling vehicle is not in that number.
No, sir, that's part of the capital outlay program. That's a separate bond.
Okay. So that was where some of my confusion, even though it's based on the buses, that was some of my confusion there. Okay.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, sir.
Chairman. Tell us again, if you don't mind, what this goes to, what is included in operational cost?
It's operational costs such as like, I know one of the examples is like diesel has, 33% increase in diesel prices has been really hard on our districts. And so those operational costs to run the buses, maintain the buses, maintain the drivers, that's kind of what this all pays for. Is that
The salary or wages for the drivers is included in that?
No, it's not salaries, it's operations. The salaries are local.
So what you said benefits, what benefits do the drivers get? The health insurance?
I think it helps them pay part of their benefits, so they can use these for operations for their benefits, but it's not a direct salary type funding source.
What's in the capital budget for school buses?
I didn't bring that. I want to say it was
20 million.
20 million.
20 million.
And they're about $100,000. I know we don't pay 100% for a school bus, but they used to be around $100,000. The way that most schools want them equipped, I think we pay $70,000. We consider $70,000 per bus. Is that right?
I don't know.
Lindsay?
My understanding is it's closer to 80 now, but the cost. My understanding is that historically we've been using around 80,000, but I know costs are going up, especially when people are looking at buses with air conditioning and other safety features. So it kind of depends on what the district can get for the money and who can deliver on it. But so it does fluctuate.
All right, so you've changed the funding formula, and it sounds to me like you're going to leave the big systems. You're not going to reduce anything from the big systems,
No.
but this is new money so that you can do more for the smaller systems.
It allows us, I think, larger systems could get additional funding as well out of this. It allows us to, our old survey, which we weren't using, I think it was like 20 years old, was based on, driver needs and driver routes, bus routes back then. So if we were to have updated it, a district such as Gwinnett would have gotten or not updated with the current funding, this district such as Gwinnett would have gotten a massive increase in the funding. And many of the small rural districts would have gotten very nominal amounts to run their districts. So with this influx of funding, it allows us to both increase all the districts and also increase the operational amounts that we pay into each of the districts. If that makes sense.
Do you have a breakdown of how that will?
Lindsay?
I haven't.
I'd like to see that, please. Thank you.
And by the way, along those same lines as other information, we actually gave, I think Lindsay sent to all the members of the committee, the breakdown by school district, by county, the unassigned funds, or the $5.7 billion that the school districts have. I think you've all got those, which is pretty eye-opening. I'd like to just take a minute to digress a little bit. I kind of like Senator Sims. I did a little survey over the weekend also, and I'm really concerned that we, and I know we've done a great job increasing teachers' salaries, but I am really concerned that the base salary that we're starting teachers out at is just so low that it really is. We're going to hit a cliff, and I'm not so sure we're not that far from that cliff. As I mentioned to you the other day, when I see in Statesboro, when someone sends me in Statesboro that Chick-fil-A is starting out people at $19 an hour, and we're starting out teachers, that's $38,000, and we're starting out teachers at $39,000 with a 4-year degree. I think the cliff is fixing to happen. So I asked 2 questions that I asked about 5 different teachers, and they sent this back to me. I said, why are people not going into education? And this is what they told me generally. I picked up the top 4. They said low income, unless the adult lives with another, such as a spouse, one can't afford to live alone. Many new single teachers live with roommates or still at home. Second was unrealistic expectations. Third one was having to work more than one job to make ends meet. That's pretty pitiful. I didn't realize that. I work with many who are in this boat. This particular person told me. The hours required outside the classroom, nights and weekends, as well as the money spent out of our own pockets for our classroom and students. That's 4 reasons why people don't go into education. I think I mentioned to you the other day when GOSA was in Statesboro, not GOSA, excuse me, when Governor's Honors was in Statesboro, actually they had tables set up, engineering, school of business, blah, blah, blah type deal. One of them was School of Education. And I went to the lady and asked her, and she said she actually had that morning had 2 different parents. Kids, the students went to talk to her about education, and the parents took them away and said, no, you don't need to do that. You need to come over here. And it was one going to the business school and one going to engineering. So we got something here that's fixing to blow up on us if we're not careful. So why are teachers not lasting? We heard from TRS the other day that the retirement now is going from 30 years down to 25 years. Why our teachers aren't lasting? Low income, lack of advancement in pay, and I didn't realize that. Few chances for higher position opportunities. lack of support and pay with more expectations yearly, behavior management issues with little support from administration, not enough timely feedback in order for professional growth, yet multiple observations and negative feedback, mental health at an all-time low, and not enough classroom support. I was actually told that some of our schools are actually using parapros to teach in classrooms rather than teachers, certified teachers. So there's a lot of issues here that y'all need to address, or y'all need to get this. And I know we talked about local control, and the word I hate, or two words I hate, is local control. But we've got to get a handle on this, because this thing's going to blow up on us. And I'm very, and I think that us as a committee are very concerned about it, and I'm sure the House Education Committee is very concerned too. But when teachers tell me this, I'm going to give everyone a copy of this. When teachers tell me this, and I'm sure y'all.
Good, that's great, thank you.
I'm sure the committee can talk to teachers and hear the same thing that I'm seeing here. So how are we addressing that as a state, and how are we addressing that in a local level? And again, we got $5.7 billion in the bank.
I mean, I can address the teacher pay portion. I mean, I think over the last several years, the governor's put in approximately $9,500 to increase teachers' pay. So it's actually around $43,500 now is the base teacher salary. And as you can see, I mean, that in our budget this year, that's a $367 million increase for that $2,500 to put it up to the $43,500. So I can talk to that.
So do you think that's attracting people into the profession? Is that enough? And I'm more interested in the discussion than I am trying to find money right now. Do you think that's attractive? Is that making it attractive for people to get into education, teaching? Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, I got
Good, thank you.
Obviously there were a lot of varying issues that you shared and discussed. I think Russ addressed the salary additions that have been made over the last 5 to 7 years for teacher salaries, but we know that's not the total issue. Superintendent Woods did a similar teacher burnout report with teachers across the state and heard similar concerns from that burnout report. We've been working on a pilot for the teacher evaluation system that we've used to try to revamp the system to incorporate things like mentorships and supports for teachers when they come into the profession, as well as looking at the structure of leadership opportunities within the profession, so that your only opportunities for growth aren't to become either an assistant principal or a principal, because there are only so many of those positions in the building. And so how do we look at providing leadership opportunities within the teacher pipeline so that there's growth within the career path? And we have been working on that pilot. I think we're heading into the third year of that pilot, but we've used ESSER funds to fund that. We didn't bring it back this year, but the last 2 years we've tried to get that pilot put into legislation. So we're happy to bring that back and work with you on bringing that back for next year for those adjustments. But you will also see or have seen within the budget a request for funds for mentoring, for a mentor program, and that mentor program is for new teachers and teachers within those first 3 years of their profession, where they get that support from veteran teachers as well, to kind of help them navigate the landscape for education, to help them stay into the profession for longer.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Are we doing anything to make sure that, and I'm going to say Senator Sims, so are we doing anything to make sure that the community in Senator Sims' district are doing all this? Are they providing funds for mentors and so forth? Or is this just something we?
The mentors are for across the state, and yes, with the pilot, we make sure that the pilot systems are across every sector and region of our state.
And so it was very disturbing for me to hear that we've actually, I think some schools have parapros in classrooms at certain levels, but I'm very disturbed to hear a lot of those parapros are now being used to teach classes instead of being in the classroom to help the teachers out.
So I think one of the things that we've done to both facilitating and help there as well is, remember, there were funds that were put in. We used federal COVID relief dollars, ESSER funds, as well as state funds that were put in the, I think it was fiscal year 23 amended budget to support those paraprofessionals with getting fully certified, with the cost of getting fully certified. So we've got a number of paraprofessionals now that are going through the process of becoming fully certified as teachers. And so recognizing some of those challenges, we've utilized dollars to help them finish their certification so that they can be full-time teachers.
And I'm told that, and I think maybe we said this the other day, that a lot of people are dropping out of education, teaching after 3 to 5 years. And how, we see that across the state, whether it be and I don't mean to relate teachers to prison system, but we see that in the prison system. We see that in the juvenile justice system, and so forth. And now we see it in the teachers that people just not with, and a lot of it's because maybe on this list I just said, but 3 to 5 years, and I don't think we're getting people back into the system that fast if we're getting that many dropping out. And then we got the retirement age situation too.
Right.
Right. We certainly, like we said, try to work on the retirement side of getting some of the retirees to come back into work, while we certainly work with our post-secondary partners and our communities on sort of the front end of getting teachers into the system. Like I said, we work on the mentoring piece, but there are other factors as well, as we work on mentoring, the salaries, but then you have things like, housing, and we have to work with the broader community on, are there places for those teachers to stay? Can they live in their communities where they, where they are working? Is that commute going to be a deterrent? So it's also about working with those communities as well to address some of those factors.
Wow, I've never thought about the housing situation. Senator Sims.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Something we need to revisit as soon as possible is probably waivers. All of the school districts now have waivers in place. Am I right? There was no sunset on those waivers.
So the districts are 132 approximately or so of our districts are strategic waiver systems, whereby they have to indicate which waivers that they would like to utilize, and then 48 or so are charter systems, so they have broad flexibility like charter schools, and then there are 2 that are no waiver systems. But all of the systems that are operating with called flexibility are under contracts, and so they are generally on between 5 and 7 year terms.
If there is little incentive to go out and find a teacher that is a certified teacher versus I can put a para in the classroom, that's a problem. And the waivers tend to exacerbate a lot of the educational problems that we're seeing, because the superintendent or the principal can say, okay, we can waive this and use this instead. It diminishes the quality of the educational, of education going forward. So we probably need to revisit waivers and just, because if it's that broad, then they can kind of do a lot of things with them.
Well, I would say that for particularly like the certification waiver, that we certainly have systems that utilize the certification waiver, but most of the time I'm trying to find certifications where they can. What we also see or have seen with waivers is you'll see sort of ebbs and flows. So when you're in a period of time when you have recession or where you're dealing with a significant teacher shortage, then what you find is we're trying to make sure we may provide more flexibility around certification, because we've got to have bodies and adults in the in the space to be able to provide supports. And what you would then see sort of on the other end when it comes time for them to review those contracts again is then the pendulum will swing again, and they'll go back, and the waiver will come in a different area, but then they'll come back into, it may not be certification this time, it will be something else that meets that need. So.
Yeah. Such a disservice to our children that we cannot get a as the chairman is saying today, this morning, the salaries are too low. Our teacher colleges are not producing enough teachers to take care of the roles that are needed. So there's a lot to do in education that we haven't done.
Senator Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. My question's on the other end, the retiree teachers that want to come back. And I know about this only because my neighbor retired and then had to wait 6 months by her school district to go back to work after she changed her mind and wanted to return to work. So can you just comment on that? Is that district by district? Or
So state law requires that once they have retired, that before they can return to work full-time, that they have to be out of the field for a year.
And that's because?
Well, my understanding was when the law was crafted, that was to make sure there wasn't abuse of the program, of people then not encouraging retirees to retire early so that they could then come back and then collect retirement and their salary. So, yes.
Senator, last year we passed a bill Pro Tem Jan Jones had in the House, and we passed it for not unperforming schools. What I forget what the term may be, but it would allow people to come back for special education.
It's the top 3 high-need areas.
That's it. Special education, math, and science, and they had to sit out a year to come back. Okay, and so I asked Buster Evans, I said, why is it a year? So I said, because if somebody stays away a year, they don't ever want to come back, I wouldn't think. He said, well, the IRS requires you to have a break in service in order for your retirement, because they retire and then come back as a full-time teacher and get their retirement and not be penalized for getting retirement. Break in service. So I said, well, do they require a period of time? He said, no, we just wanted to use a year. So I said, so we have now introduced a bill that can't go this year because it has because these type of bills, I was told by the Legislative Council, only has to start at the beginning of a session, not the second year of a session. So we've got a bill that we introduced this year, was going to introduce this year, to allow teachers, when they retire. Also, the bill that was passed last year, you had to be, it was a 30-year retirement period. Our bill drops it down to 25, okay? And then it also allows teachers to come back after 90 days, because since the tax law does not say there's a specific time period, we chose 90 days on this bill. And then also, this bill would allow a principal to hire a teacher to come back as a civics teacher or come back as a social studies teacher instead of those 3 critical areas. So, and it would be across the state. So that's something that we're working on. Does that help? Yeah, thank you. Senator Parent.
Yes. Do you know what percentage of our current workforce is within 5 years of retirement?
Thank you, Larry.
I don't have that offhand, but we can get that for you.
Okay. Isn't it a pretty high percentage? Or no, you're just really not sure?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to know that.
What was your question?
What percentage of the current workforce is within 5 years of retirement? Kind of piggybacking off what you were trying to ask earlier.
Yeah. I think it's a huge percentage. I don't know.
Right.
But
Tiffany said they could get it for us. And even 10 years of retirement might be worth knowing, right? Because 5 years goes pretty quick. Thank you.
Let me ask you, what's happening to the training? We got in the budget training right here, training experience, $249 million. What's happening to training experience funding if teachers are complaining that they're not getting raises? I mean, so is that? I mean, I'm a little bit confused.
Well, I think there's two parts of.
You pull that around.
I'm sorry. There's kind of two parts of it. Teachers, they have step raises related to T&E based on how many years experience that they have. And then there's raises such as what the governor's proposed, like the $2,500, which will adjust each of the steps, each of the base steps in the scale up 2,500. So they'll get a raise there, and then they should get raises as they gain more experience.
So
Or training such as a higher degree.
So those are actual raises. Those are not bonuses. So they're built in because I know we see the increase in the TRS funding as a result of all that too. So okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Senator Sims. Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask about the cost of the screeners. I've heard from so many folks this weekend via email. Explain to us, and I think the chairman has also asked about this early on during the last few meetings we've had, the screeners. Can somebody talk about it?
You said the question is the cost of the screen?
The cost of the screeners, when most of the schools are asserting that they already have screeners in place. And when you talk about screeners, are you talking about a program of study? Or are you talking about individuals, personnel? Kind of explain. It's so confusing.
So a universal screener is an assessment that is designed to help us know if a child might have a problem in an area. It does not give real detailed and specific information. I tell people that a universal screener is like the check engine light on your car. If you're riding down the road and the check engine light comes on, you know you want a mechanic to do a little bit more digging before they start to repair your car. And so that's kind of what a universal screener is. It waves a red flag. Oh, this child may have a deficit in phonemic awareness. And so then a skilled teacher can dig a little deeper and find out exactly where that problem is and go from there. The Georgia Early Literacy Act, though, not only requires that we have screeners that do all of that, and it specifies certain areas that have to be addressed, but it also specifies that the approved screeners have to be capable of progress monitoring, which layers another part onto the screener, which might be some instructional pieces that then you can use that same screener to progress monitor whether or not the child is getting better at phonemic awareness. But in my experience as a practitioner, the prices of screeners can vary pretty significantly.
So we have asked for new screeners, a new set of screeners. And the letters that I'm receiving, or the emails being received, talk about keeping their old screeners. So what is the dichotomy there? What is the difference?
So school systems have been using universal screeners for many years, and I realize that has just become something that we've talked about up here recently, but school systems have been using these tools for many years. And so, as you know, the state board approved a list of screeners back in July, and then they lowered that list of screeners in February. The Deal Center had done a psychometric review of the screeners. A lot of people have said that when the Deal Center ranked those screeners as strong, moderate, and weak, that meant they were good or bad screeners. And if you read the entire Deal Center report, that is not what it talks about. And so many districts are already using screeners and have been for a number of years. And districts choose different screeners for many reasons. A lot of districts want to have screeners that go beyond third grade, all the way into 8th grade, and sometimes even into high school, because they want this longitudinal look at children and they want this growth trajectory over many years. Georgia Early Literacy Act is really just talking about K through 3. And so districts who have invested funds and professional learning over a course of many years to have to turn on a dime and change to a new screener for just their K through 3rd grade students, I can see where they would be concerned about.
So are the schools going to be mandated to purchase screeners, new ones, that are being approved by the state board or the deal, whoever is approving them?
Currently, in the Georgia Early Literacy Act, schools must, beginning August 1st, 2024, must screen students either with an approved screener that is on the list of approved screeners or with a free screener that is under development right now with the Department of Education. Now, Senator Hickman has an amendment to the school supply bill, Senate Bill 464.
Yes, ma'am, I believe that's right.
That is asking that we have just a single mandated screener for all of our K through 3 students in the state.
So let me follow up on that. So if a school system is already buying their own screener, House Bill 538 requires the state of Georgia or the DOE to furnish a universal screener to all schools free of charge. Okay, so if somebody's already using a screener, they will then have the opportunity to get this other screener free of charge. What our amendment, instead of that, right now there's 13 screeners on this list. Okay, our amendment says you can't take 13 screeners and measure children all over the state of Georgia based on 13 screeners. So our amendment said let's the free screener that's furnished, not the one they're buying, but the free screener that's furnished, let it be the same free screener for your county, for my county, for Senator Kirkpatrick, Senator Parent, Senator Davenport, so that we can measure, and particularly as Chairman Scott Johnson mentioned when we had our press conference, if a kid lives in Bullock County and that child moves to Evans County, if we got different screeners, that we really not going to be able to keep up with that kid, that child's advanced or not. So the free, excuse me, what we want the free screener that's going to be mandated by 538 to be the same screener for everybody. And North Carolina, that's what North Carolina's doing. The free screener is the same screener for everybody. So if your school system is already buying a screener, it's not going to affect that at all. Am I correct?
Well, that is, but also in the Georgia Early Literacy Act, it discusses that in choosing screeners that it should be chosen to minimize the impacts on instructional time. And so if you're saying we're going to provide this screener that is required by everybody, but you can still continue to use another screener, we don't want to double assess children. We can't just assess children. We have to have an opportunity to teach children as well. And so that the statement of, well, you can still do that screener, you just have to do this screener as well. And my real issue is that screeners are not designed to make lists of systems of who's doing better and who's not doing well. The Georgia Early Literacy Act requires screeners, and it requires that local districts report their screening results to the Georgia Department of Education. While 13 screeners is not ideal, the reality is when the Georgia Department of Education gets those reports, even if there are 13 screeners, we can analyze those reports and provide technical assistance to those districts who are having difficulty or who show that they're having difficulty there. I do think that there has to be a balance somewhere between what happens in real life in schools and what happens when we talk about it in these rooms up here. And sometimes that's very different. And so I believe that we are at a place where we've got to come to a better understanding and a better balance of that.
Let me ask you, as we talk about screening, we're also, part of this is dyslexia testing. And I know Senator Parent was the one that alerted me to that last year so strongly. When a child is tested in Evans County, Georgia, with dyslexia testing, and they're found to have some form of dyslexia, what happens at that point then? Because there's no program in Evans County. The only schools I know of are some in Atlanta, and I think now in Macon. I guess it's one thing to test them, but what happens after the test?
Well, and so a screener doesn't tell us if a student has dyslexia. A screener can alert us for characteristics of dyslexia.
Okay.
And so then you do a lot deeper diagnostic testing to determine if a child has dyslexia. And if a child has dyslexia, the school system all over the state can provide specific interventions for that. I mean, we have a lot of research that tells us what students with dyslexia need to be able to learn to read and learn to read well. And so, and a lot of those have to do with the techniques that the teacher is using. You've probably heard, well, I won't talk about specific techniques. That wouldn't be a good thing to do. And sometimes children with dyslexia will end up being served through an individualized education plan, an IEP. They will enter into some sort of special education, but not always, because there are interventions that we can offer in our schools through our multi-tiered system of supports. We call that MTSS. We love some letters in education. And so, but there are many ways that children can be served through that MTSS process and not necessarily have an individualized education plan to address those needs. It really depends on the severity for the child.
So is there a process in the school system to work with that child so that there is?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not picking up on that.
So for example, a child we call it a double dose. And so maybe a child is in their regular Tier 1 instruction in their regular classroom, but there might be a time period of the school day where the child goes out to an early intervention program or just to an intervention teacher that is going to provide some more time on task, some more specialized instruction. Sometimes when children go into special education, then their services change a little bit. They might be in a classroom that has 2 certified teachers, a regular education teacher and a special education teacher, an inclusion model. Sometimes children go into a resource classroom. And so there are many, many different ways that children could be served based on their needs.
So how long have we been doing this testing? And I'll tell you why. Just a second. Dyslexia testing.
So Senate Bill 48 was passed in 2019, but the actual testing requirement begins at the same time as the Georgia Early Literacy Act in August.
The reason I said it because I met a parent last year when we were up here on Dyslexia Day, and she said they self-diagnosed, and I said, well, what did you do? Well, our school system didn't have any way to help her, so they now come to Atlanta to a school up here 3 months out of the year in the summer for that child to go to a dyslexia school. So this dyslexia testing has not been going on for a long time. It would just start with 538?
Well, the requirements in Senate Bill 48, the first 3 years of Senate Bill 48 were a pilot with 10 pilot schools or 9 or 10 pilot schools. And the testing requirements, the screening requirements begin in August 2024, just like the Georgia Early Literacy Act. And if you compare the things that have to be screened on the 2 tests, they're almost identical for characteristics of dyslexia.
That's why I have such a problem with what we're doing is that was mandated by the legislature. That was not mandated by DOE. Why are we having to why are we having to get y'all to do things when y'all were educated? I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, I don't know this stuff.
Senator Hickman, school systems have been using universal screeners for many, many, many years. This is.
Well, that's not what
and
I'm hearing.
Well, I've been in education for 33 years, and I promise you, universal screeners have been used for many, many, many years. We have had a lot more focus on dyslexia and on literacy, and a lot of that came about as a result of the pandemic, and it's a good thing. We need to be focused on
agree.
literacy. It is the foundation of everything else we do. But I think it's erroneous to believe that just because a law was passed that then schools started to do this, because schools have been using these screeners for years, which is one of the reasons that schools are hesitant to want to give up something that they believe has worked for them. And so, like you talk about the North Carolina single screener, I met with North Carolina's literacy director and their multi-tiered system of supports director just last week, as a matter of fact, on my way home from here. And I asked how long they've been using a single universal screener, and they've been using a single universal screener for 13 years. And so North Carolina has been paying for that and provided training for the teachers for that for 13 years. They tried to change it one year, and there was almost, the term the woman I was speaking to used was, there was almost a revolt because teachers wanted the one that they currently use, and so they switched back to that quickly, and that's been a good thing for them. But the reason I was asking those questions is because I wanted to know their process about moving to one, and they couldn't even remember because they weren't in the department 13 years ago when all of that happened.
I guess sometimes I think about, and there's no lights on, so I'm going to take advantage of it. I think about when I was in school, or y'all were in school, the kids that sat at the back of the classroom, and we thought they were just cut-ups. And I wonder now if maybe they were dyslexic, maybe they couldn't see the board, maybe they couldn't hear the teacher, maybe they ADD, and we didn't have a clue about any of that kind of stuff. And so that's what bothers me now, is that I'm getting more, as we get more and more in this, I'm getting more and more concerned about those children, because we know that the children of today experience a lot more difficulties than we did growing up.
But I promise you, teachers are concerned about those children.
Oh, I no question about it. I know the teachers that day, and that's part of it too. So, let me ask you. Let's see. Let's drop back, a little bit on the 5% literacy coaches. No, let's don't do this. There's nobody. Senator Davenport, you have a question or anything? Okay, well, I'm gonna use your time then, okay? Talk about the literacy coaches, the 32 literacy coaches, and how we're gonna spread them out. Because I've heard different things about it, and now I think y'all have come out with some type of tiered type approach, as opposed to one time there's gonna be 2 literacy coaches put in each RESA district, and I think maybe y'all have come back now and identified it's going to be more, maybe a little bit more than that in certain districts, or have not?
Actually, our tiered coaching plan has not changed since we presented it to, I'm assuming, the governor's office, possibly. And so that plan is tiered in that it looks like a pyramid, and so we would have a state structured literacy coaching coordinator who would work closely with these 32 regional literacy coaches. I think people assumed that meant 2 per RESA, but we know that we wouldn't be able to use exactly that formula because it wouldn't be equitable. Right. And so, but 32 regional literacy coaches across the state that would then work with a person in each district who was tagged as the district's literacy lead. And so communication and collaboration would come from those 32 regional coaches to those district coaches in all of our school districts. And also, that the broadest part of the pyramid, of course, is the 1,333 schools in Georgia that have K1, 2, or 3, those
Right.
grades in them. And so those 32 regional coaches would serve as a collaboration piece with that district literacy lead, but would also work hand in hand with people in individual schools. They can't do that by themselves. And so we've identified that at RESAs in our state, we have ELA specialists that are generally split funded. Some of their role goes into school and district improvement. But we also have a cadre of growing readers specialists who are already in many of our schools and already working in a coaching model with individual teachers. And so our program would require all of those RESA level, those regional level people to work together to figure out in our region where are the needs. Growing readers, you're already working over here with these people. We're going to ask you to continue that. We'll focus our work here and really prioritize the need, because the need is not exactly the same everywhere. Many of our schools have literacy coaches. In those cases, we want to bring those literacy coaches on board. We want to make sure that they've had the right kind of structured literacy training. We also want to make sure that they have the right kind of coaching training. You know, it's different to teach adults than it is to teach children, and so we want to make sure they have the right kind of coaching training to do that. And so that statewide structured literacy coaching coordinator and those 32 regional coaches can help lead all of that, so that we have a nice tight framework which will help to provide an opportunity for equity throughout our state, because it's important for all of our children to have opportunities to learn from highly qualified teachers that are being supported in the work.
Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How, and I don't know how to say this, but there are some schools that are districts that may decide they don't want the structure. They rather do their own things within the districts. What are we going to do with them? Do they have a choice?
Well, we have the Georgia Early Literacy Act, and so we have these things that are part of Georgia law now, and so no, they really don't have the choice.
Because I know of some that don't want any help. They don't want anybody to come in. We need to get rid of those superintendents because it is so, the children, they're not learning. And they're just horrible leaders within those schools. So hopefully, if someone decides that they don't want to cooperate with the Department of Education, that we get rid of them. Hands down. I don't know how we're going to do it, because I know that they're there because of boards of education, but we need to get rid of them because children are being damaged every day with that kind of mindset.
We do believe that this model will provide a level of support for teachers, who are working directly with students. And
we're talking about the leaders in those buildings.
I know, but
I'll have that conversation with you offline, okay?
And so I'm perpetually positive. I believe that if we
I am too. I'm positive if they don't want to cooperate, we get rid of them. Positive.
I'm positive if we support teachers in the right way that we'll see good things result.
Yes.
And the intent of this tiered coaching model is not to come in with a stick. It is to come in and walk side by side with teachers who are doing the real work in our classrooms.
And and here lies the rub. Teachers are invested, and a lot of teachers are leaving because of leadership in schools or lack thereof. It's not always the money. It's not always this. It's a combination of things. So if you have a leader that has decided that he or she, I'm not going to participate, I don't care what they tell me, and the children continue to suffer, the communities that they serve in continue, then we need to have a way to get rid of them.
You mentioned waivers a while ago. The Georgia Early Literacy Act is not allowed to be waived.
Great.
Right. I guess, jump back to the pupil transportation. I think when we talked about that the other day, that had not been updated in a bunch of years. Are we going to stay on top of that now, those things like that? So, and it seems like that's universal around this part of the world here. Things don't get updated and all of a sudden they get leapfrog real. Seems like it happens in every department everywhere.
Yeah, we've actually worked with, we do a superintendents, they do annual surveys, and we've revamped this to include that in those surveys, so we will collect this and update it each year. We just needed this funding to be able to, so we could start.
Thank you. Senator Davenport.
Yeah, just one, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment. I think at some point the Superintendent Woods need to call and answer some of these hard questions and really listen to the conversation. I think we are supposed to be meeting the needs of every child in the state, and I'm not sure if that is at the top of the list. It may be. My mother taught 38 years, and retired 34. I just, meeting the needs of every child is just important to me, and I'm not quite. And they do a good job. He has his team to come, but at some point, I think superintendent needs to be here.
I agree. I went and looked at some stuff over the weekend, getting ready for this meeting today, and our superintendent salaries are pretty darn high compared to the people that do teaching. And so, and I've told y'all this several times. Joanne's my wife's a retired 2nd and 5th grade teacher and then taught for GED at Geisha Tech for 10 years. We got a daughter-in-law that teaches, and we got 2 daughter-in-laws that teach. So a lot of this is kind of stuff that I hear from them, and I know y'all hear because we're all passionate toward these people, because we all got a tremendous place in our heart for our children, and we want our children to be the best. We don't want to be good. We want to be best. Nobody, there was a book called Good to Great. I don't know if y'all ever read it or not, but Good to Great, and it said nobody wants good, they want everything great. You don't go to a steakhouse and want a good steak, you want a great steak. And that's kind of what we want for our children. So we appreciate y'all's time, and we appreciate y'all's patience with us and listen to us. And again, just like we said a while ago, this is a joint effort, and we look forward to working with y'all. And any way we can help y'all, we're open-minded, and we're very open to it, and we'd love to have conversations with y'all on a regular basis, because you can tell from this committee, this appropriation, and the education and higher education, we're passionate about this. And so I'm happy to say this is not a complacent committee by no means. So thank y'all. Y'all have a great day, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. And I do need to talk to y'all offline.
I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.